It's now my pleasure to introduce the guest speaker. Gertrude Matshe. I hope I've got that right. Close. Matshe is married and the mother of 3 children. Gertrude is an African storyteller, poet, artist, self-published author, entrepreneur, and the founding director of 3 successful companies in New Zealand. Her extraordinary ability to manifest her dreams into reality can only be described as the way of the wizard Merlin, for she has the Midas touch, and everything she touches turns to gold. Her speaking engagements have drawn crowds of over 2,000 at recent engagements. She will now share her amazing story. Welcome, Gertrude.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm absolutely honored to be here today. My name is Gertrude Ruwadzano Munyaradzi Matshe. I didn't want to challenge my host with all my names, but I was born on one of the most fascinating continents in the world. Africa is a harsh continent, but it prepares you to live anywhere. Up until the 22nd of April 2006, I had not quite known what my life purpose was. It was 2 weeks before the launch of my first book, and I woke up that morning with words in my head that had to go down on paper. So I went to my computer and I started writing. And I realized that morning that my voice, my body, my very being in this incarnation is merely a channel the Creator is using to awaken the world. A lot of people ask, Gertrude, are you the typical African woman? I can tell you bluntly now that no, I'm not. What I do know is that I was born to be her voice and the voice of her children. Let me tell you a little bit about the typical African woman. In my country, and when I say my country, I'm talking about Africa from North to South Africa. The typical African woman is at the bottom of the food chain. The typical African woman is always the last to eat. Her role in society is to bear the children, fetch the water, fetch the firewood, make the fire, prepare the food, prepare the fields for sowing, sow the seed and harvest. And in most situations, she does this single-handedly. And at the end of her exhausting day, she is the last to eat the leftovers of her prepared meals. In my country, the typical African woman is physically and psychologically abused. In times of war, she is raped. And she is the personification of the downtrodden human being. Now, while all this is happening to her, she asks you, where are you, my father, when my education is sacrificed? Where are you, my brother, when I toil in the field and in the kitchen? Where are you, my mother, when my genitals are cut from my body with a sharp knife? Where are you, my sister? Where are you, my aunt? It is your hands that pin me down. In times of war, when I am gang raped by 10, 15 men, where are you, my father, when I am violated? Where are you, my world? Where are you, my fellow human beings? Why do you allow this to happen to me? Now, I know everybody in this room knows what's happening in Zimbabwe today. According to the United Nations, Zimbabwe is now on a level 7 for genocide. Level 8 is after the event. And the world is doing absolutely nothing for us. I don't think my coming here today was an accident. I got this invitation a year ago. And the man who called me said, we have this meeting in Invercargil in June 2008. Can you come and speak to us? And I said, Chris, what am I going to say to dairy farmers? I'm just a motivational speaker. And he said, Gertrude, I've heard your story. You have to come. So I'm here today addressing maybe 400-500 of you. Each of you knows at least one person of influence in this country. Help us, please. We're trying to form a petition to get the New Zealand government to step in, to mobilize other countries around the world to make a difference in Zimbabwe. So please see me at the end of my presentation. We need your help. Now, because I'm not the typical African woman, I'm going to share with you today the spiritual journey that has been my life. I was born in a small village called Wedza on the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe and Mozambique. It's the kind of place where you are born there, you will die there, you will amount to absolutely nothing. But I was born to two amazing parents. My parents put me through private school from day one. At a time in Rhodesia with racial segregation, where African children received a substandard education. And the way they did it was, they taught us how to use our hands. By the age of 6, my mother had taught me how to knit, how to crochet, how to sew, how to paint fabric. And after school, we would make crafts in my mother's house. And during the weekends, we would go to all the white neighborhoods to sell. We would knock from door to door to door, selling our wares. My mother can sell snow to the Eskimos, sand to the Arabs of the desert. She is the most amazing salesperson. And I learned by watching her. They put 5 children through private school. And out of 5 children, we are college graduates. I have a sister who's a laboratory scientist. She works for Wellington Hospital at the moment. I've got 3 younger brothers, 2 of them. One is a banker and one is a lawyer. So they did good by teaching us and getting us a good education. So you must all be wondering how I came to New Zealand. I keep telling people the winds blew me here. I was not coming to New Zealand. August 2001. My husband and I came back to Zimbabwe. We had been living in South Africa for 7 years while we were studying. And we got home to find our economy in ruins. There was food shortages. I couldn't find work. I was trained as a systems analyst. I had a business studies degree with a major in industrial psychology. I could not find work. So we went on the internet, and I found a website advertising for African artists to go to America. I'm a batik artist. I hand paint textiles. So we thought, okay, the US is the place. So I toured the whole of the United States with my fabric. Ended up going to every single city in the States, and my work sold. I make African clothes. This is one of my caftans. So I thought the African American market loved my African clothes. We could make a living there. But while I was there, people kept asking me about my batiking technique. And it's a very simple technique where instead of using wax, we use cornmeal and water. That's our staple diet. We found that we could use our leftover food for fabric painting. Very traditional technique. So I designed this little workshop for 4 hours, and I approached all of the community colleges, and I started teaching people in the States. I would insist on 50 people in a class at $50 a head. I was making $1,500 for a 4-hour workshop. So I had 15 workshops lined up in New York. I went back home, and we had enough money for air tickets for me and my 3 children. We used our entire savings for those air tickets. And my husband said, take the children, go. Try and find work, then send for me. So I get on a plane, and I fly from Harare through Johannesburg. We were supposed to stop for 1 hour in Joburg and continue to New York. When we went to check in after an hour, the lady who was serving me found an error on my daughter's visa. The U.S. Embassy transposed the last 2 digits of the passport number on the visa sticker. Small little typographic error. Instead of a 1 and a 2, they put 2 and 1. They said, you can't proceed, you have to go back to Zimbabwe. I went back to the U.S. Embassy, and at that time, all the white farmers were being murdered in Zimbabwe. It was chaos. Anybody who had a passport was leaving the country. And the U.S. Embassy said to me, Gertrude, we're really sorry. We had to change our rules 2 days ago. You now need to show that you're financially stable. Come back with a bank statement with $6 million, and we'll correct this error. We did not have $6 million. I remember sitting at home and crying and thinking, what kind of a God would do this to me? I was on that plane. I went back to the airline to try and get a refund on the tickets. They were cheap Apex tickets. The airline said, no, if you don't fly, you don't get a refund. We lost everything. Now, this all happened in August 2001. A month later, we watched in horror when the Twin Towers came down. My workshops were going to be in a building near the Trade Center that went down on September 11. And I realized that I wasn't supposed to be on that plane. We were spending 2 weeks in New York. Our end destination was New Orleans. I paid a deposit to rent a house in New Orleans that disappeared 2 years later with Hurricane Katrina. So when I look back at my life 7 years later and find myself living in New Zealand, it's nothing short of a miracle. I have a cousin who had lived in New Zealand for 5 years. She says one day she was surfing on the internet. She was going through the Hotmail address book, found my name, sent a one-line email saying, is this Gertrude? This is Priscilla. I'm in New Zealand. Please get in touch. So I wrote back to her and I said, look, I am stuck. We have no money. We've just lost everything we've had. She said to me, Gertrude, if you have faith, find the money. Buy those air tickets. Come to New Zealand. You won't regret it. So as an act of faith, my husband and I sold a house that we owned in Cape Town, and I arrived in New Zealand on the 1st of November 2001. Now, my cousin is a single mom. She's got 4 teenage kids. She said to me, Gertrude, if you're coming, come alone. Don't bring the kids. I can put you up on my couch, but if you bring your 3 children, it's going to get complicated. So I get to Wellington Airport, and I am trying to hide 3 children behind my back. And the look on her face said, I cannot do this. She takes us home. I remember we arrived on a Thursday. We slept for 1 night in her house on the floor. On the Friday, she came home from work and said, look, let's go around the city. I'll show you Wellington. So we drove to Miramar and Seaton, Upper Hutt and Lower Hutt. And driving back to Karori, we stopped in Kandala. She said, this is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Wellington. But I wanted to show you how the other half are living, she said. So we're standing in Kandala in the village, and we are reading the prices of houses at the Harcourts building. And I'm converting into Zimbabwean dollars and thinking, oh my gosh, I could never live here. A woman comes out of the building and introduces herself to me. Her name is Trudy Flynn. So we are both Gertrude, so we kind of hit it off on the name Gertrude initially. Trudy is Dutch. I speak a bit of Afrikaans. And in my broken Afrikaans and her broken Dutch, we just became friends. And I said, look, I've just arrived. I've got 3 small kids. I've got to find somewhere to stay. She says to me, do you see that apartment down the road? I said, yes. She said, that belongs to my sister-in-law, Helen. It's been empty for 3 months. I'll talk to Helen. Maybe she'll reduce the rent and let you move in. By Sunday, I had moved out of my cousin's house into an empty 3-bedroom apartment in Kandala. I lived in Nicholson Road. Does anybody know anyone in Nicholson Road? No one? I lived in a neighborhood where the people have just totally blown me away. Trudy told everybody in my street that there's a new family in town. If anyone has anything to spare, they should come and see me. My neighbors came and knocked on the door and said, Gertrude, I've got a bed. I've got a couch. I've got a chair. By the end of that Sunday, I had a fully furnished house. My New Zealand experience has been unique. You know, when you see foreigners coming into your neighborhoods, coming into your communities, you have to realize how hard it is for us to be here. We have left everything and everyone. Just a smile from a stranger in a supermarket can make your day. So I started stressing about trying to find work. I had $2,000. My children at the time were aged 8, 9, and 3. The older two started school straight away, but childcare for my 3-year-old was a real problem. $15 an hour, not knowing when you're going to get your next job. I sent out my CV all over the city. Fortunately, the year I came, IT was on the essential skills list. There was heaps of work for IT workers. And by the end of that first week, I had 3 interviews lined up. But I had no one to look after my son. So I was standing in Pack and Save one day buying vegetables. And I attracted another African lady who came to talk to me. And she said, excuse me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Zimbabwe. She said, you know, I'm from Zimbabwe too. So we started talking. And I have a breakdown. In the vegetable section of Pack and Save Petone, I started crying. And I said, look, I've just arrived. I have $2,000. I have got to find work. I need someone to look after my son. And this girl just hugged me and said, don't cry. I came with my mom. If you trust us, we will watch your son for you. Now, this lady lived in Wainui Mata. The distance from Wainui to Kandala is almost 40 kilometers. So I told Trudy that I found someone to look after my son, but now I need transport. And Trudy's son had a car that he sold me for $500. So I would drive 40 kilometers every day, drop off my son, and by the end of my second week in New Zealand, I had 3 job offers. So I took a job working as a systems analyst for a company that designed hospital software in Wellington. And everything started to fall into place. It took me 3 months to make enough money for my husband's air ticket. But when Barton came to New Zealand, the Medical Council of New Zealand took 8 months to give him registration as a gynecologist. He sat at home for a month and he said, look, I can't do this. So we went on the internet and he found work in Queensland, in Mount Isa. When he got there, he called home and he said, Gertrude, stay where you are. He said, New Zealand is beautiful. They had thrown him at the back of the beyond in one of the wok-wok little towns. He said, I'll commute back and forth until the registration goes through. But we didn't know it was going to take a whole year. So in that time, I tried to keep on my full-time job, 3 small children, and I was losing it. So at the end of that year, Barton came home, and I decided to talk to my boss and try and renegotiate my work hours. I had been promoted to project management level at the end of 3 months, and they commissioned me to work at Wakefield Hospital, New Zealand's largest private hospital, and I computerized the theater systems at Wakefield. I was invoicing $25,000 a month for my services. My annual salary was $60,000 per annum. So I walked into this man's office with confidence. I thought I was of value to his company. And fortunately for me, my boss was in a very bad mood that day. I asked him if I could work from home in the afternoon, go to the office in the morning. He said no. He said, it's either you stay or you go. The only thing I could think of as I stood in this man's office was a saying I had read in a book that morning that said, if a man kicks you on the butt, let it push you towards your goalpost. You know how you think of crazy things? I'm thinking, why am I thinking this? And I thought, maybe this is the kick in the butt that I need. I had plan B. I had thought, if he said no, I will go back to my art. I'll go back to my painting, try and make a living from my art. So I resigned on the spot, came home, told my poor husband, who was still job hunting, that I quit. And I said, don't worry, I will go back to my art. So I started painting. I painted 100 meters of fabric. And I went all over Wellington trying to sell my fabric. and my fabric would not sell. I was painting 3-meter pieces of fabric, and everywhere I went, people would say to me, "It's so beautiful, but can you paint ferns? Can you paint fish?" I was painting zebras and giraffes and African animals and trying to sell an African product in the New Zealand market, and it wasn't working. One day I had a dream. I dreamt of my grandmother, who I'm named after. My name is Gertrude Matshe. There's an R missing in Gertrude. My grandmother was brought up in a German orphanage. At a time when colonialists came to Africa, they would forcibly remove children from their parents and bring them up in orphanages. My grandmother did not know her African name. She did not know her parents. And she says when she learned to read and write the English language, she dropped the R in Gertrude as an act of defiance. She decided to get rude. She says the nuns would beat her until she was black and blue, but she refused to change her name. And in Africa, when you name a child after you, it means you will never die. People say your name on a daily basis. So if I correct my misspelled name, it loses the essence of who my grandmother was. So there she was in this dream. She had died 10 years before this. And in the dream, she was speaking in English. She hated English. She had her hands on her hips. And she said to me, "Gertrude, if you have a problem, break it up into small pieces." This is 2 a.m. I'm sitting up in bed thinking, what was that? I go back to sleep. I wake up in the morning and the dream made perfect sense. I got out my scissors and I cut my fabric into small pieces. This is now the principle I apply to everything I do in business. I started making cushions. I made 1,000 cushions and sold 1,000 cushions in 3 months on the internet. I formed my first business in New Zealand, which was a business selling cushions. There was a little shop in the village that was open, and my kids could walk home from school and come and spend the afternoon with me. The shop had a loft at the top, so I could fit a desk and a bed, and it was just absolutely magical. I ran this shop for 1 year, and at the end of that first financial year, I found I was making more money selling off the internet. So I took the business home and closed the shop. But while I was sitting in this shop waiting for customers to come in, I got a bit bored. And I started thinking about other business ideas. And I wanted to start a recruiting agency for IT workers. But that year, they took IT off the essential skills list, so I couldn't import IT skills. But when my husband was job hunting, we saw hundreds of vacancies on the internet for health professionals. I thought, what if I start a recruiting agency for health? So what I did is I wrote back to Africa to all our friends, told them where we were, asked them if they wanted to come to New Zealand for a year. 5 of my husband's friends said yes. I placed 5 doctors, and I made $125,000 in 3 months, sitting in my bedroom slippers at home. I hit on $1 million business. My company has been going for the last 5 years, and I employ women who have children who want to work from home. It's a totally paperless business. We use the internet to communicate with people. So if you know anybody who's looking for work, I'll give you my email. So that's what I did. Now, out of the proceeds of this business, I decided to go into property investing. The next business I formed was the GM Global Investments. The lady I met when I first arrived, Trudy, was a real estate agent for Harcourts. And I love houses. So every time Trudy had an open home on a Sunday, I would go and sit with her and watch people putting down their offers when they buy houses. And she would explain all the jargon and terminology. 3 months after we got to New Zealand, we were renting a house in Kandala. The owner's in Australia, and he decides to sell the house. We did not have money to buy this house. I said, "Trudy, I want the house. How can I make it happen?" She said to me, "Gertrude, I will teach you a trick, but you need to trust me," she said. She said, "Whose car is that?" I had just bought myself a nice little Pajero on hire purchase. I owed a finance company $15,000 for that car. I said, "Trudy, the car's not mine. It's on HP." She said, this is what you do. Go to the bank, get a personal loan to pay off the car. Take the car back to the car dealer, sell it back to them at a loss. Come back with a check. Doesn't matter how much it is, I'll show you how you can buy this house. So one day I come home walking, and Barton says to me, Gertrude, where's the car? I said, I sold the car. He said, why? I said, because we're going to buy this house. He said, how can you trust a stranger? I said to him, look, I don't know. Something in my heart says, trust this woman. So Trudy helped us put down a conditional offer on our house. And we said to the owner, here's $10,000. I made a $5,000 loss on that car. Can we have 6 months to come up with the other $10,000 deposit while we rent? The owner said yes. We bought in the right street at the right time in Wellington. That house went up in value by $100,000 by the end of the first financial year. We used the equity of that house to buy more properties, and our property investing business is now worth $4.5 million. We started this company 3 years ago. The next business I formed was when Peter Jackson was filming King Kong. I went to a presentation where Peter was talking about how they made Lord of the Rings. And I'm sitting in the audience thinking, gosh, I wouldn't mind acting in Peter Jackson's next movie. You know how you think of these crazy things? So I put up my hand when they were asking him questions. I said, Peter, how are you recruiting for film? He said, why? I said, I used to be an actress in Zimbabwe. I know you're working on King Kong. What can I do to take part in the movie as an extra? He said, okay, here's an email address. Send an email and a photograph to my PA. Someone will get in touch with you. I met Peter Jackson on a Thursday. On the Friday, I got a call, and this lady said to me, Gertrude, how many Africans do you know in Wellington? I said, I know quite a few people. Why? She said, we're actually looking for 300 African extras for one scene. Have you watched King Kong? The Skull Island scene in King Kong? Most of those people are Zimbabwean. I ran all over the city with digital cameras, taking pictures of people on the bus, in the train, in supermarkets, getting them to sign up as an extra for the movie. But the way we ended up doing it is that we called our 50 friends and asked them to call their friends. And we will get to people's houses, and there would be queues of people waiting to have their photographs taken. I signed up 450 Africans in one weekend. I went as far as Napier, Havelock, Palmerston North, the whole weekend taking pictures of people. Created a database. Went into Peter Jackson's team, put forward my business case. They said, sure, sign a contract. So I supplied extras for King Kong. They called me again a week later and said, we're now in Auckland. We need Caucasians of Jewish and Greek descent in Auckland. Who do you have on your books? I had never been to Auckland except in transit. I sent out 10 emails to friends. That email kept going. In 2 weeks, we registered 1,500 Caucasians of Jewish and Greek descent in Auckland alone. That's when I discovered that there was a need for someone to represent ethnic minority people for film and advertising. We are now the largest agency that caters for ethnic minority people for film and advertising in the whole of Australasia. So I turned that into a business. I'm going to show you a little clip. While we were filming King Kong, I was so inspired by Peter Jackson. That man is a magician. I resigned from work, hired a managing director to run my companies, and I went to film school. I decided that I wanted to write a movie based on my book and try and highlight the plight of HIV and AIDS in Africa. And we're going to show you a little video of a commercial I put together. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Simzisani Creations. Simzisani is a culturally unique talent agency focusing primarily on Black African faces and personalities for the film and advertising industry. Formed in Cape Town, South Africa in 1994, Simzisani is now an international operator and is based in Wellington, New Zealand. We offer a wide range of talent, including actors, models, dancers and musicians of African origin, as well as from a diverse range of ethnicities. We can cater for all your on-screen talent needs. You can contact us through our website, www.simzisani.creations.com. We hope to be hearing from you soon.
I was so inspired by Peter Jackson. Now, if you notice in this video clip, I'm also one of the dancers. I had 8 girls who were supposed to dance for me, and they didn't show up on the day of filming. So I had to play 2 roles. I learned how to edit, I put this together, and that's what I use for my marketing material. Now, I'm going to ask my sister and my friends to just go through the audience. They're going to hand out a feedback form. So we're going to hand out the forms in the middle, and you can just pass them on. The reason why I'm giving you the feedback form now is I like to improve what I do. Please give me honest feedback. If you think my presentation isn't a 10, out of a scale of 1 to 10, I need you to tell me why. I need you to tell me how I can improve the presentation. The other thing on the feedback form is, as I'm speaking, please make notes of things that really resonate with you today, things that you think might be transformational for your life. I use this material to write my books. So if you can do that now while I continue, thank you. The next business I formed is a coaching business. I had a lot of people call me and email saying, Gertrude, I want to start a business. Can you help me? I'm an ideas person. Every time I go around New Zealand, I come up with about 10, 15 ideas a day. And my husband said to me, Gertrude, why don't you start writing them down? You can share these ideas with other people. So I'm writing a book called How to Grow a Money Tree. And I work with people who have ideas and show them how they can turn them into money. I think my biggest strength is that I was born in Africa. I take risk because I've never had a safety net. I've never had a fallback plan. So in everything I do it moving forward. People ask me, Gertrude, were you a nurse? How did you form Medical Recruiters of New Zealand? And I just have to tell them that the only thing medical that I know is that I sleep with a doctor every night. That's all I know about medicine. But you don't actually need to have knowledge to do something. What you need is the idea. You will attract the people to you who will help you make that idea a reality. And that's how I've done it. In everything I've done in business, I found out somebody who's done it. I read their books. I model on what they do. My book is going to win 8 Oscars. I decided I want to be the first African person to write, direct, and produce an Oscar award-winning screenplay. I do believe it can happen. It's never been done before. So what I've done is I am writing this script with specific actors in mind. Do you all know Denzel Washington? Denzel Washington is acting in my movie as my husband. I will be hopefully acting as me. What I did is I kind of projected into the future. When you read my book, you'll find that the last chapter in my book is my obituary. I wrote down everything I want to achieve from now until I die at 100 in 2067. It has all started to come true. The movie is going to gross $500 million on the box office. Everybody who's taking part in this project is doing it as an act of charity. I have a foundation called the Africa Alive Education Foundation. We look after HIV orphans. So everybody's doing it for free. Last year in November, my son, who was 18 at the time, went in for an audition to take part in a movie pilot. When he went in for his wardrobe fitting, we were told that Denzel Washington was the director for this movie. He came to Wellington, New Zealand. And I thought, oh my gosh, this stuff is working. I said to the lady who was doing the casting, can you tell Denzel that I know him? I took part in a movie called Cry Freedom. Anybody ever watch Cry Freedom? I was 19 years old when they filmed Cry Freedom. I had a small walk-on, walk-off part, but I met him before he was famous. So they told Denzel, he comes out to see me. He says, Gertrude, what the hell are you doing in New Zealand? I said, Denzel, I'm writing a script. I need your help. You're going to act for free. This is the mission. He said, Gertrude, if I have the time, I'll do it. I went ahead and wrote my Oscar acceptance speech. I know it by heart. We are winning 8 Oscars, the best in everything. This is my most favorite quote in the whole world. The most wonderful thing about life is that you get a chance to write the script, be the director, and star in your own epic. Everything that's happening in your life right now, you are creating it. If you want to change it, you have a decision to do that right now. People don't take responsibility for what's happening in their lives. So that's my Oscar. And the last time I went to Los Angeles, I actually bought myself some fake Oscars in a curio shop. I've got 8 of them labeled best of everything on my mantelpiece. And every single day, I see those Oscars. I hold them, I touch them, I believe I can do it. And I've been struggling with the writing of the script. So I thought to myself, I live in Wellington. The best script writers in the world are right here in the city. So I made an appointment to see the mayor of Wellington. And I said, Kerry, I am struggling with writing my film script. I need you to introduce me to Peter Jackson. I had to wait 5 months to get that appointment with the mayor. The day I went in to see her, she said, Gertrude, you are the luckiest person I know. I've got a meeting with Peter next week on Monday. She hands in my book and my script on a Monday. I get a call from his office on Tuesday. I'm now working with Philippa Boyens, the lady who wrote Lord of the Rings and King Kong. They have come on board to help me write this film script. But if anybody had asked me when I was starting how I was going to do it, I would have told them I have no idea. But what I've done is I've attracted all the right people who are helping me make this happen. It's been an absolutely amazing journey. So my inspiration for writing the book came in Christmas 2004. My parents had come from Zimbabwe. We were having Christmas lunch. There was food on the table, just an excess of everything. And a girlfriend in Auckland called me up and said, Gertrude, switch on the TV. Oprah's in South Africa. And she was standing in a soccer field full of children. She had 50,000 HIV orphans spend Christmas with her. And she made me remember what I had left behind. As she spread out her hands, she said, this is the lost generation of Africa. These are children who will never get to go to school. Most of them have lost both parents. Africa needs help. And I remembered. I sat down with my mom and I said, Mom, let's just make a list of the children we know by name. We came up with 49 HIV orphans in my family alone. On my husband's side, altogether, we have 89 HIV orphans between the two of us. My grandmother had 34 grandchildren. 19 of us have died from AIDS. They've left an average of 48 children without both parents. So I thought, how can I make some money that can get these kids through school? And I wrote my book. This book is self-published. The way I'm speaking today is how I sell this book. I speak for free. I speak all over the country, and people buy the book, and I support children in Africa. Before I knew it, the book was selling like hotcakes. It was hard getting it into bookstores. Nobody would take my book. So one day I walked into TVNZ, and I went to the receptionist, and I said, I need to be on TV. This lady looked at me as if I was crazy. She said, why? I said, I've written this book. I need to get some free publicity. She gave the book to the research department, and that weekend, the Dominion Post had done a full write-up about the book and the foundation that I'd set up. The lady who got to read my book said she read it overnight. She couldn't put it down. I got on the Good Morning Show a day later, and when I was being interviewed, the interviewer said to me, Gertrude, where can people buy your book? You can buy it off the internet on bornonthecontinent.com, but I had it in one Paper Plus branch in Lower Hutt. So I told a small white lie on national TV, and I said, the book is available in Paper Plus, which it was. I just didn't say Lower Hutt. We got the book into 160 bookstores countrywide that day. People started phoning Paper Plus, ordering the book. In one day, 160 bookstores got in touch with us for free. So this is my mission. It took me 2 months to finish writing this book. I've sold about 3,000 copies so far, and I formed a foundation called the Africa Alive Education Foundation. And the aim is to educate children. My vision has grown much bigger than the 100 children. We have 17 million HIV orphans on the African continent. 6,500 people die every single day from HIV-related diseases. That's the equivalent of 20 Boeing 737s going down every single day. And the world doesn't know about it. Nobody knows what's going on. So I keep thinking, if you could help me in one small way by buying a book, we could grow the next Nelson Mandela of Africa. I do believe that the researcher who's going to find the cure for AIDS is one of these kids. We are left with households, with elderly grandparents, with 5, 6, 15 grandchildren and no income. These are some of the conditions in which they live. That lady is actually an aunt of mine. She had 6 children. They're all dead. She has 10 grandchildren. She lives in this little shack. Look at the holes. In winter when it rains, it's just heartbreaking to go and see her. So what I've done with the project is I'm trying to raise funds to create a microloan system where we teach the community on how to build houses for the orphans. So we're not going to build orphanages. We're going to find key people within the family who can take on 8 children, and we build them a house. So the villagers are going to be taught how to make bricks, window frames, door frames, roof tiles. They build the houses for us. I have a project with the women. We've been sourcing manual sewing machines all year, and the women are going to be taught how to make the school uniforms for the children. So that's effective giving. The reason why aid doesn't work in third world countries is because you give us enough to last us a day. You get a sack of corn. By the end of the month, it's finished, it's gone. You're begging, you're waiting for more to come. Effective giving is about giving people skills, showing them a way they can get out of poverty themselves. Teach a man to fish. So that's what the project we are putting together with Africa Alive is, to empower communities to look after these children. So that's a project I've already started with the rural women in Zimbabwe who are learning how to sew. And this is my family. My amazing husband, Barton, my son, Simba, my daughter, Zianda, and my other son, Dumisani. This is my team. I would not do the things I do without these people. They are my absolute rock. And this is me at the age of 6. When I was 6 years old, I had one school uniform. I would go to school looking like this every single day. When I got home from school, my mother would wash that little dress. By the end of the year, that little dress would be threadbare. But my mom always used to say, just because we're poor doesn't mean we have to show it. Be proud of who you are. Be clean. Charities ask for funding, and they show you pictures of impoverished children with flies on their faces. People are desensitized to that. What we're trying to do is to show you the potential in every single child that we support and the future that they can have for our continent. At that age, my dad used to allow me to clean out his wardrobe every weekend, and I'll check out his pockets and get pocket money. One day I was cleaning out my dad's wardrobe, and he walked into the bedroom, and I was about to throw away an old pair of shoes that was at the bottom of the wardrobe. Dad walks in and he says, "Don't throw away my shoes. Those shoes are magic." I looked at him and I said, "Dad, why?" He puts me on his lap, and he takes out a photograph of himself standing on the steps of the Colosseum in Rome. My father went to Rome in the 60s, when most African people couldn't even afford to get on a bicycle. He turned the shoes over, and the shoes were totally soulless. They were so worn out. And he said, "Do you see the shoes in this photograph?" I said, "Yes." He said, "These are the same shoes. I had to put newspapers on the bottom of my shoes to get on a plane and go to Europe for the first time." And he said, "Gertrude, all you need to do is dream. If you can dream big, anything you want can become reality." And it has. So I need to appeal to all of you today. We need your help. We need to do some fundraising. We need people with large databases who can share their databases with us We're going to be doing a virtual book tour where we sell the book online on the internet. Book distributors, if you know anybody who owns a bookstore, please give them my details. Translators, the book is already translated into Spanish, so I can get it into the South American market and into German. Access to radio and TV. Fundraising ideas. Right now, I'm doing a fundraiser. Wellington City Council gave me the town hall for free, and I'm having a charity ball and an auction. If there's any ideas that you know that could help me generate money, please share them with me. Of course, we need money, and we're trying to put together a worldwide pledge to the United Nations to save Zimbabwe. Here in Invercargil, we're looking for 5 acres. My sister and I have been brainstorming an idea. We looked at organic farming and how lucrative it is as a market. And we're looking to lease 5 acres of land in Invercargil. If anybody has got some land, they can lease out to us. We want to start a market gardening project and then use that as a pilot to take back to Zimbabwe. These are the books that I'm currently writing. The Property Squillionaire is all of my property investing ideas where I teach other people how to invest in property. How to Grow a Money Tree is all of the money generating ideas that I have. And this last book is a continuation of Born on the Continent. I decided last year to find a charity I could support in New Zealand that deals with children. And I came across a lady called Kirsty Peacock. And Kirsty has a foundation that helps children with Hunter's syndrome, a very rare disorder. Her little son Jack has been given until he's 10 to live. He's 5 now. And she has to raise $250,000 a year for his medication. And the health system doesn't support her. I said to Kirsty, well, I've got 3,000 people who've read my book who are waiting for the second one. I'm halfway through writing it. Why don't we co-write a book together? You write 150 pages. I've got 150 pages. We put them together. It's a 350-page book. So that's what we're doing. And we're actually fundraising for her foundation with this book. I'm coming back to the South Island in July. We are doing a tour called Empowering Women, where we get a group of women together. There's 3 of us, and I am into my motivational speaking and business. Shona is into health and wellness, and her daughter Rachel is into personal development. So if we get enough people who are interested in us doing it here in Invercargil, we will come to Invercargil as well. We're going to be in Timaru, Oamaru, Christchurch, and potentially Invercargil if we get enough interest, and Ashburton. So there is hope. I thank you all for being here today, listening to my presentation. Can I have a show of hands who would like a copy of my book? Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'll be signing books outside. Please buy one for yourself, one for someone you love, one for someone who needs inspiring. My signature might be worth something very soon on eBay when I win those Oscars. So thank you kindly for having me here today. Thank you. Thank you. If people have questions, we might just do questions.
Would anyone like to ask Gertrude some questions? Peter?
You're fabulous, fabulous enthusiasm. How could anyone say no, and how have you responded when that's happened?
My mom used to say, oh, I'm not on. Anybody there? Sound? Oh, okay. I'll come back. Here. My mother used to tell me that if you get a no, it doesn't matter. When you ask for something, you go in knowing that that person has got 2 choices. They can either say yes, or they can say no. It's a choice they have. So you know it's a possible of 2 answers. So if they say no, thank them for their time. Move on to the next one. That's where you'll get your yes. A lot of people get knocked back by no's. If they get one no, it's, oh, nobody wants my product. Oh, nobody wants my idea. And they give up. You keep going. If you have conviction and you believe in what you're doing, you believe in your business plan, knock on the next door. That's where you'll make your sale. And you know, when you learn to do it once, twice, 3 times, it becomes very easy to take those no's. It's their loss. It's their loss for not listening to you. That's my attitude. People have got a choice. Any other questions? Do ask me questions. Your questions help me write my books. I write my books based on questions people ask. Here's another question. Thank you.
Yeah, Gertrude, that's a fascinating presentation. At one point you said, I think my biggest strength is that I was born in Africa. I take risks because I've never had a safety net. One of the speakers earlier this morning commented that you tend to become conservative once you have something to become conservative about. I would guess by your business success you now have something to be conservative about. Do you think you ever will be?
No. Somebody asked me, Gertrude, will you ever get tired of creating all these new businesses? I said, hell no. I'm an ideas person. And what I'm doing now with my companies, I create it, get someone to run it. Create the next one, get someone to run it. Because the more money I can make, the more difference I can make in Africa. I generate money so I can give it away. Anyone else? Yes, another question here. Okay. Hold on, I want everybody to hear your question. Just hold on a sec.
Gertrude, you talked about the men's role or lack of role in Africa. Are you addressing that with your aid projects?
Addressing it is a big issue, and I'll tell you why this has happened. With colonialism, men could not live in the cities with their wives and children. It was too expensive to live in the cities. So what traditionally happens is in Zimbabwe you have 2 homes. The husband works in the city alone. The wife is in the rural area with the children. This is where the divide comes in. It's not that they don't want to help us. It's just the situation we find ourselves in. The redressing of the land issue in Zimbabwe, I was born on a reservation. Most of my family live on reservations today as we speak. Nothing has changed for most African people. So it's not that they don't want to, it's not that they don't love us, they love us, but what can you do? If you need a job, you go to the city. So you leave your wife and children in the rural area. That's what's created the divide, and a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't get the dynamics in Africa. It's not by choice. Thank you.
Just a couple more questions and then we'll pull it together.
Thanks, Gertrude. I really enjoyed
You're not on.
Am I on now? Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gertrude, thanks very much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I've got a company bringing overseas people to work in the dairy industry.
Right.
And I'd really like some feedback from you about what farmers can do to welcome overseas people into the community and help them settle in to the new life.
That's an amazing thing. I'm working with a refugee service in Wellington. And what happens with the refugee service is people are brought into a community and they're put to live in one area. Worst thing you can do to people who are coming in for the first time. It's okay initially when you arrive, but what ended up happening, like in Wellington, most of the refugees are in lower huts. Correct? They end up speaking their language. They don't get to assimilate the culture, the New Zealand culture. I actually work with them to show them the opportunities that are there. People refuse to go and do volunteer work. You know, when you volunteer your time, you're not working anyway. Go into somebody's workplace, sweep their floors for nothing. They get to know you. Before you know it, you've created a job for yourself. A lot of people are coming to this country and they get frustrated. They say, there's no work here. There's no money to make. There is money to be made in New Zealand. The way I bought my first house, to raise the extra $10,000, I was working full-time as a systems analyst. I put an ad in the local rag, and I said, I will pick up your laundry and iron it and bring it back. I ironed people's clothes. I was making $600, $700, $800 a week ironing clothes in my home after work. So when people are grouped in one area, it disempowers them. They then don't move outside that group to assimilate New Zealand culture, to find out what's going on where, their English doesn't improve, they don't get work, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. You have to assimilate a culture when you get to a new place. That's the only way you will establish success. So that will be my biggest teaching to you. Teach people to go out there, mix, mingle. In the city councils, most of them have got the ethnic forum that they can join. Teach people how to network. My success has been based on people that I know. Every business idea I've had is because I'll ask somebody who's got the knowledge, they give me the knowledge. So that's the biggest teaching I can give to anybody coming in new in New Zealand. You have to mix with the locals. You're not going to make it on your own. Thank you for sharing that. Are we done?
Just make this the last one.
You're not on. You're still not on. Oh, I'm too close. That's me. Sorry. That's me being too close to the speaker.
What can we do to help the situation in Zimbabwe?
But I think collectively as a group of people who are in the dairy industry, let's get a petition together that we can take forward to the Prime Minister. If you would like to help me with that, please, let's just do it. You've obviously got a mailing list that goes out to all of you. Let's do a petition that we can take to the Prime Minister's office. Ask her to get other international countries to intervene. Sorry? There's already a website to do that? Okay, no, I haven't heard of it. Okay, let's broadcast that. Have you already done that? Okay, awesome. Apparently there's a website to do that. But you know, the more vocal, local New Zealanders are, the better it's going to be. I saw Helen Clark on TV the other day, and she was talking about this issue, and what she said was, you know, the world has to do something. New Zealand is a very small country, but it has a lot of clout. Look at the way we stayed out of the Iraq War. This was one of the only countries that had the balls not to go in there. And it's the safest country because of it. It's a small country, but it has clout. Thank you. And maybe write me a letter that if I go with a bunch of 500 letters from dairy farmers in New Zealand, I'll take it in person. Thank you.
Put your hands together, please.
Thank you.
We were handed, there's a website, avaaz.com, avaz.com, which deals in some of those issues via petitions apparently, so if you feel so inclined you can certainly look that up. What an inspiring story. I think shows no matter how much we think life might be tough down on the farm, we don't really have too many issues, and it puts into perspective people perhaps in our own country that complain about how tough life is and how they didn't get a start, and you know, they don't have anything to complain about really. It's a matter of choice and it's a matter of attitude. If you've got the attitude and you choose to try and get yourself out of where you are, the ability's there, the opportunities are there. So thank you very much for that, and a good way to finish the conference, I think, with a very uplifting story. And I know you've obviously added a lot to our country in the short time you've been here, and I think if Zimbabwe ever gets its act together, and you know, there are plenty of people there trying, I think you'll be an amazing strength to go back and help the people resurrect their lives. And I'm sure there are many more like you that, just provided with the opportunity, will actually can turn things around.